How you doing, fam bam? If you haven't heard already, some consumers out there have been running into issues with Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero. And several of the fan bam out there has brought this to my attention and asked specifically if I had any problems with Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero. And I'd like to share with you my personal experience so far before you do purchase this motherboard. Here's everything that you do need to know about Asus's Z690 Maximus Hero and what personally happened to me. As you notice around me, this is not my typical studio. I am in a temporary location because I am staying at a friend's house until we move to our permanent location. And I can't wait to finally set up this new studio. I know you're not here to listen about the studio. You want to know more about Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero. As you already know, I have content where I built a 12900K PC. I've ran stress tests, I've ran benchmarks, and I haven't had a problem with my motherboard. Until one day I decided to go into my studio and tried to wake my PC. I moved my mouse, I touched my keyboard, and I didn't get a response. And it could have possibly been because I didn't have my keyboard or mouse to wake. I assumed, of course. So I tapped the power button on my PC because that's how I have my PC set. When I push the power button on my PC, it just simply goes to sleep. If I push it, it just wakes back up. Push it, I do hear the fans are running, and I do not get any signal to my monitor. The weird part was the fans were spinning, so I attempted to shut down my PC. I actually held down the power button on my case and it would not shut down for anything. I held it for probably at least a good 10 seconds and I knew the PC was unresponsive. So I went down to the back of the case where the power supply switch is, and because I had no choice, I had to cut it off by the power supply switch. After I hit the power supply switch, of course the PC then turned off. As it turned off, I waited several minutes and then I just hit the switch back on. I pressed the power button and it didn't respond to when I pushed the power button. Although it kind of did, it kind of gave me a blinking light as if the PC was asleep. I didn't get any type of post, nothing, nada. So naturally, I gave it several attempts and the PC had refused to start up. So I attempted to restart it several times naturally, and of course I still had that same issue. I had a blinking light in my case and it would not respond, no post, even though I had the typical RGBs, they were still lit up and everything. And mind you, this is before anybody ran into any type of problems or anything was reported with Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero. Although it's rare for things like this to happen with computer hardware, and it is a new technology, so there are some problems that still do need to be buffed out, especially when it comes to things like PCI Express 5 and DDR5. This is still relatively new technology. Anyway, that's not the point. You guys want to know exactly what happened and if it was a motherboard problem indeed. So one of the first things I also did was to check if the RAM was out of place to see if it was sitting correctly, because when PCs usually don't respond as well, the RAM could be the source of the problem. So I attempted to reseat my RAM and that was not an issue. Luckily, I was doing another build, but before I wanted to put this power supply in there, I ran some tests with my multimeter and I did not see any type of issues with cables. Although I did sniff around, I did do the sniff test to see if the power supply was bad, if it smelled burnt, because typically when power supplies go bad, they have this burning electrical smell that you know that the power supply went, or if any components are bad, you'll have a very distinct electronic burnt smell. But I didn't smell any of that. When I swapped out the power supply, I did swap out the cables with it just to make sure that there was no defective cables, and it still did the very same thing. I still got the blinking light to where the PC was not able to turn on. Another thing that I've also done was to check the CPU to make sure everything was sitting properly. The thermal paste looked like it was spread perfectly. It spread just like exactly how I wanted it to. The CPU was seated just like how it needed to be, and everything was in place. So I ruled out the CPU, I ruled out the RAM, I ruled out the power supply. So the next thing I had to check was the NVMe. So far, I have never ran into an issue with Samsung's 980 NVMe, and it seemed like that was okay as well, because I put that on my workstation and my workstation picked up on that NVMe immediately and it read just fine. So there was only two things I had to check left, and that was the connections to the PC, if it was the power switch to the motherboard, if that was on incorrectly in any type of way. I double checked my connections, everything looked well. I knew it wasn't just the switch. With Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero, they do have a start button on the motherboard itself where you can start it up manually, and it still did the same thing with the blinking light on my case. So I just about tested every single component. The only thing I did not test just yet was the GPU. So I went to go pull out the GPU to see if that was the case, and I plugged it into another PC. I plugged it into my workstation and it worked just fine. So I left out the video card and I also popped out the RAM, and guess what? It still did the same thing, no post. So from therefore, I did know that Asus's Z690 Hero Maximus did have a problem here. So naturally, the next step is to contact Asus. That's the only thing you can do in a situation like this. And it was a little while since I purchased this motherboard from Micro Center, so I didn't want to return it to them. So I wanted to send it into Asus and let them judge the problem for themselves, because I had a feeling I may not be the only person out there that ran into some sort of issue with their motherboard. So I contacted them and they are excellent. They are wonderful people to deal with. They don't really give any issues whatsoever. So they told me I can RMA my motherboard, but of course I had to ship it on my own dime. That was one of the negative things. I had to pay out on my own dime in order to send it back to Asus, but that's okay. As long as they get the motherboard fixed, hey, that's all good with me then. So fam guys, I gotta tell you right now, I'm super surprised that it's coming from a company such as Asus, because they are usually outstanding when it comes to their products. This is probably one of my first experiences with Asus where it actually had an issue to where I had to send something RMA'd to them. It's really surprising considering it is one of the top PC manufacturers out there. In a way, that could also be a problem, and you'll see why coming up. So after Asus was willing to RMA my product, I uninstalled the motherboard from the case. I made sure it was in a ESD bag. I safely secured it, packaged it, and sent it out. It was about $20 flat when I sent it out, and it was also insured just in case if there was any type of issue with it. As you know, I do have a YouTube channel to take care of, and I have a responsibility to share with you guys to let you know when things like this does happen, and it's happened to me so far. I'd rather it happen to me than to the fan, because at least you'll know about the product beforehand. So luckily, while I did send it out, I had a case empty without a motherboard, and it was practically just a very pretty looking brick. So I went into Micro Center to see if they had any Z690 motherboards in stock, and luckily, therefore, they did have one in stock, the same exact one. Asus's ROG Z690 Maximus Hero was in stock, and I was able to successfully reserve it and pick it up the same day. After I reinstalled this brand new motherboard, no problems whatsoever, working great, did the same thing, stress test, benchmarks, no problems whatsoever. I was pretty impatient because I didn't want to wait on Asus, and I didn't know how long it would take for them to repair this brand new motherboard. After everything was installed, everything seemed like it was going well, and then all of a sudden, I get a response back from Asus. Wait till you hear this. So I did receive a response within the week, and this was already after I installed this brand new motherboard into my PC case. This was really a hard lesson for me to learn. I don't want the same thing that happened to me to you guys. Make sure to take pictures of anything that you do send out, and you'll find out why. Maybe because it's a large company and they feel like they could cover up any type of issues, but take pictures of the product before you do send it out. Asus contacted me back and they blamed it on bent CPU pins. I'm very careful when it comes to installing PC stuffs, and this is not my first rodeo. I've built PCs for the last 20 years. And I had to say, if the pins were already damaged, the CPU would not be able to successfully connect to the motherboard. It would not even post up to where I would be able to stress test it, or I wouldn't be able to give it benchmarks or play games on it. As disappointed as I was, Asus did offer to repair the bent pins for $130 US. So I did opt in to do it, but I did also let them know that it is not the issue, because more than likely I think it somehow got damaged through shipping, or somehow it got damaged in, I don't know, some sort of way. But anyway, I let Asus know that I don't believe it's a CPU pin issue, that more than likely you're looking into a more serious problem, that may not just be the CPU socket. So they kind of gave me a vanilla response and said that they would replace the CPU socket and that they will do further testing to make sure that the motherboard will work before they sent it back to me. So therefore, I got the motherboard shipped back to me. So I did want some pictures from Asus about the packaging of the motherboard that was originally sent in, and Asus did not have those pictures. The only pictures that they sent to me was the bent CPU sockets. So again, that's why I recommend taking photos before you do send out anything, because then you could run into a problem like I did. Luckily, it was me who had to eat the $130 US, and that it wasn't anybody else out there. So I literally just got this motherboard back probably about a few days ago. I already have the new Z690 motherboard still installed in my case, and it still hasn't been giving me any issues, and I have yet set up this motherboard just yet. So Asus did give it to me in this beautiful white little regular non-exciting box. As you can obviously tell, it is not inside of a case just yet, but pretty soon this week I will be doing another PC build with it, and I will share with you if it works. I'm going to be filming it anyway, so you're going to see if it works or not. If it doesn't, I'll be pretty pissed, and because I'm going to have to send it back to them again. But so far, it looks like everything seems to be okay. Ironically, just the past several days, Reddit users out there, consumers that also did purchase this motherboard, ran into the same exact issue, to where the motherboard would not post, to where the PC would not start. People were actually experiencing burns on their motherboards. I did not examine it closely enough to see if there was. I really should have, to see if there was any capacitors that popped. But it actually makes sense, regardless of what Asus told me. I knew it couldn't just be the CPU socket. I knew it had to be something a little bit more serious. One Reddit user said that they had a Q code 53 before he actually heard the pop. And then another user who was just playing a game and examined the wiring carefully before he actually did start playing with his PC, he also heard a loud pop on his PC. It probably happened when I was away, but sure enough, when I did go back to my PC, it was pretty locked up and it would not wake. So Asus did respond back to both of those consumers, and they said the same thing to both of them. And that was because the RAM was not compatible with their motherboard. One of the users said that he had G-Skill's G5 6000 MHz RAM installed on his PC, and another user, which is his friend who also ran into a very similar issue, has the same exact RAM as Moa, which is Corsair's Dominator's RGB's 5200 MHz. He also felt the same exact problem that he ran into is pretty ridiculous, because Asus also told him that his RAM was also not compatible, as he purchased his from Newegg as a motherboard RAM combo. At least I knew I wasn't going crazy here. At least I think I'm not crazy, unless you tell me I am. In response, Asus quietly pushed out this brand new BIOS on December 22nd, which causes more stability on a DDR5 platform, which is the 8011 BIOS. Asus has never formally commented on this issue, so I am glad that a couple of the fan bam did bring up the subject, because I do want to bring this up to you guys. It's definitely caused me to change my viewpoint on Asus a little. I just want them to be honest with all their consumers when problems do occur such as this. They don't want their consumers to lose faith in their brand. In reality, they're gonna just end up hurting themselves more for just not telling us the truth. If you're wondering if this motherboard is even worth purchasing, I do personally love this motherboard. I still love Asus. Feels like a parent that's lied to me and just kind of shrugged me off their shoulders. But to be honest with you, fan bam, if you are looking to purchase this motherboard, I honestly wait on a version 2, because with this BIOS flash, it is only a temporary fix. It does not come easy, especially if you do not have the disposable income to purchase a motherboard, because I know many of you out there do end up saving a lot of money in order to purchase nice items like this. So this BIOS is a temporary fix until they figure a more serious fix. And if the serious fix requires me to remove my motherboard again, I'll honestly probably go a little crazy. But luckily I do have a workstation I still can work with, and then you know it's more hardware related, and that's not going to be very fun. I'd honestly wait on a version 2 for a Z690 Maximus Hero. So fan bam guys, I hope you found this content very useful. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you know anybody who is interested in purchasing Asus's Z690 Maximus Hero, make sure you share this video with them. And also, if you're not part of the big wonderful fan band, make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button for more. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell. For all the newest updates, make sure to follow my Twitter handle right here, as it is the same as my TikTok and IG as well. Fan bam guys, I've got to say, I will be installing this brand new motherboard, and as soon as I do, I will let you know. I will post it up on my Twitter, which PC will have this Z690 motherboard. Fan bam guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys had an excellent holiday. Love you guys.